We too fast, we can do it like Sakode. Follow me, you don't know how to touch my love, I got to follow, I'm making you do it to me. Follow, I'm making you to me. Follow, I'm making you do it to me. Follow, chicky, follow, I'm making you do it to me. Follow, I'm making you to me. Follow, I'm making you do it to me. Follow, chicky. Thanks to everyone listening to this radio station. This is the African Portal Radio coming to you live from Pretoria here in South Africa. Thanks to those of you that you are still online with us. Thanks for those of you that you are calling us. We already have our very own in the studio with us that will be having this conversation together. It's going to be a beautiful conversation. Eron is already here in South Africa in the studio with me that will be having this conversation together. It's a bright, good day here in Pretoria, South Africa. God bless those of you that you are joining this conversation. Thank you for being part of this journey. And I want everyone listening to us in Uganda. I want us to share this program. Let it go viral. This is your radio. The African Portal is for Africa, the African continent, and we promote African ideology and African language on this radio station. Thanks so much to Eron that is joining us all the way from Uganda. Thanks to you. I really appreciate it. Before we take much of your time, let me allow you to introduce yourself. But before I do that, let me apologize to everyone that is listening to us. This show is supposed to be started by 2 o'clock, but due to connection and getting the signal from Uganda, that is why we are a bit delayed, about 20 minutes behind. Please, our apologies for that. Eron is already in the studio with me. Eron, how are you today, and how's everything go with you in Uganda?
Oh, we are fine. I'm fine. Everything is fine. I'm set for the show. Thank you for having me here. Greetings to the viewers and listeners.
Thank you very, very much. It's going to be a very beautiful conversation in this studio for today. Thank you. I'm so happy to get in touch with you. And I believe so much that God already prepared a time like this that we will be addressing the issue that have to do with African continent. We have a very beautiful people in the continent, a continent full of mineral resources, and a lot of things is happening in Africa. One of the greatest continent in the world that have many mineral resources, and a lot of things that is good is happening in Africa. But unfortunately, African citizens, they are not tapped to the resources. They are not enjoying the wealth of Africa. Let me come in this manner by reintroduce you to everyone listening to me, because I see you just mentioned your name. You didn't tell people what you do, the position you hold in the society, and the rest. I just want you to give the full details of who you are, where you are, and the position you hold in the society.
Okay, yeah, you are seeing me from Kampala, Uganda. I'm in Mengo, a suburb of Kampala. Kiiza Eron is a human rights lawyer based in Uganda, Kampala, capital city, and I manage Kiiza and Mucha Advocates, a leading and specialist human rights law firm in Uganda that does strategic litigation, constitutional litigation, and advises civil society organizations and activists in Uganda. I am very passionate about human rights and about poetry and about Africa, certainly, as my mother continent. So, privileged to be here. Nice connecting with you guys.
Thank you very, very much. I'm so happy. That is the reason why I actually invite you to this studio because I know you are a woman right and you are so passionate. You are a poetry, you write poem and stuff like that. You are going to giving us some poem as well on this program before we leave this program today. And as well, we are going to be talking about what you do and about the life in Uganda. If I may ask you, what is the situation right now in Kampala or in Uganda, your country, where you are?
We have been in a COVID-19 lockdown. We took the trend of the most popular trend of locking down the economy, and most essential services have been working. The bankers, the health professionals, a few lawyers, some courts, but we have seen an easing starting from yesterday. We are beginning on the journey of easing the lockdown restrictions. So between 6:30 and 7 p.m. when curfew starts, all Ugandans with private cars can now drive them wherever they want. But by no means that does the lockdown is still around. So public transport is still seriously restricted, and most people don't have private cars, although there are still many private cars. So we have just started. We are on the baby steps into unlocking our economy, and that's the status quo in Uganda.
Thank you very much for that update. Thank you very, very much. We are going to be discussing a lot of things around the African continent, the language, African culture, and the challenges facing the Africa and the way forward. Because one of the reasons why we organize this conversation is for us to prepare a ground for the coming generation. There are some lapses in Africa that we need to address now. If we don't address them now, it's going to be a problem for the incoming generation. And one of the things that the African Potter do is to portray the good side of Africa to the next generation, for them to see the beautiful of African continent in culture, in food, in behaviors, and in reasoning. So those are the things that we are putting together on this program as the African Potter. But before I go into that, this week we celebrate, on Monday we celebrate African Day. A lot of countries in Africa, I mean, they celebrate the African Day, and it's a very beautiful celebration here in South Africa and to AU, African Union. But let me just take it this way. In Uganda, you just tell me now that there is a lockdown, and a lot of people in Africa, they were complaining about the lockdown, that Africa should have looked for another way to attend to COVID-19. That Africa is not a continent that they should be thinking of locking down because of the way and the manner people are living in Africa. Almost 80% of people in Africa, they have to wake up in the morning hustling to get the food onto the table. So locking down caused a lot of damage to ordinary African citizens. In Uganda, where you are, what is the situation look like?
Um, like elsewhere, there has been a lockdown. We have had most people who live hand to mouth, the peasants, the urban poor, and basically most Ugandans have been negatively affected by the lockdown. They can't access food. Government didn't provide them with food, so that's the most important thing. They can't move. They don't have money. They don't have food, and they are locked down. So that was very debilitating. But it was mitigated by people who came in to help their neighbors, by the few areas, spots where government managed to provide food. They provided some food for some spots in the capital city. And of course, the fact that still the vast majority of Ugandans live in the rural areas, in the rural economy, and the agriculture, the subsistence farming was not really seriously impacted by COVID-19, because if you could access your garden on foot, you could harvest your food. So the urbanized sections of Uganda were badly hit, while the rural parts of the country were not as much affected, because for them they are used subsistence, they can go to their gardens. The urban poor, the average Ugandan a capital city, in a town, were badly affected. And of course, if I may
I
add,
like that. That have shown to us as as an African.
yeah, so
You
of
say
course,
something?
I beg your pardon. I
Okay,
beg your
continue.
pardon.
Continue.
Um,
Yes, you can
of
continue.
course, COVID-19 came with some securitization of the economy. We saw many security people out. What they did, the misconduct of the South African police is also reverberating across the continent. In Kenya, in Uganda, the security people from their barracks now came out and meted out their brutality in a bid to enforce presidential guidelines or healthy regulations. But in the midst of that fog, there was that true African spirit of communal living, being a good neighbor, and of course self-sustenance. People who had gardens relied on them. People who know how to make their food without depending on processed or bought food. So that's part of the aspect. And of course, we are a resilient people. The African people are a resilient people, regardless of the challenges they face. They really stand up to it and ultimately conquer it. The way they conquered slavery, the way they are fighting racism in America, and the way they did with the civil rights movement in America, and also apartheid in South Africa. So that spirit is still alive.
Great. Thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you very much for that update. What do you think about what people saying about the lockdown? That the lockdown idea is not a good idea for African continent. Do you support that?
To some extent, they are right. And the extent to which they are right is that a lockdown per se wouldn't be a bad idea if it is well planned, because COVID started in December and these lockdowns spiraled in Africa around March. So there was time enough to plan. So if you provide people with food, and the lockdown is enforced in a humane, though strict way, and it is applied uniformly, not some being favored. Like in Uganda, a certain family, rich family, connected, the foreign minister was allowed in while the rest of the Ugandans were clamoring to come in back, stranded in China, USA. They haven't been allowed. They are about to be hopefully. So a lockdown per se is not bad. What is bad is how you plan it, when you institute it, whether it is justifiable. And as we have seen in Tanzania, you don't have to copy a lockdown from Europe and paste it here. You must also assess whether your economy can withstand a lockdown. If your economy is going to crumble, then the lockdown is not the proper thing to do. If you can't afford to feed people indoors, then don't lock them down. So it's not a clear cut answer that I would suggest. I would say that the people who are leading Uganda, who are leading Africa and other countries, must assess objectively, logically, based on what is the ground, to determine whether or not to do a lockdown, and if so, when.
Hmm, hmm. Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. The point that you bring up there is very, very important because a lot of people in Africa realize that this lockdown have caused a lot of damage for their businesses. A lot of people already enter into big debt now because of the lockdown, especially in some environment or some area in Africa, like in a civilized, I mean, in the capital cities of some country in Africa. But having said that, let's quickly look at this situation in Uganda. Like I like to say that you say the lockdown is not bad if it's well prepared. In the area of preparation for the lockdown, do you think that the Uganda government they prepare and they do a lot for the citizen?
Well, the Ugandan government was not very well prepared because, yes, they provided food, but it was little and didn't reach most parts of the capital city, and it was only in the capital city. So all other towns were left out. There was excessive use by security forces. It's continuing. The curfew is still being enforced in a very harsh, strict and not organic manner. So the planning was very poor. But the Ministry of Health on its own was doing a very good job, and the regulations they issued for social distancing, for cleaning, improved hygiene, sanitizers, washing hands. Uganda followed those directions and they yielded fruits. The bad aspect was the lack of planning. Basically, in Uganda, there was basically a lack of planning, a militarization of the COVID response, and the politicizing of the same by the ruling government to enrich itself politically and use the opportunity to crack down on dissent and monopolize the political limelight.
No, thank you very much. So, what you say now is that the government did not do enough for the citizen in Uganda.
Yes, they didn't do enough, and they didn't even do much. They did too little, too late. Up to now, most people in Uganda, and in fact, most people in the capital city, which is the only city that was given food, have not got it. So it was too little, too late, too much politics, too much securitization, and that wasn't good.
No, thank you very, very much. In part of the some areas in Uganda, we saw some picture of the news where a lot of people are complaining that they don't receive anything from the government. Is the government are they only in some certain areas to distribute with the food, or they just consider to just think of, okay, this is the only part of the place we can distribute, because a lot of people are complaining that the food is not getting to them. What system the government use to distribute the food to the people in Uganda?
The